Fratelloni's.
Joe, I am rolling.
Fratelloni's Hardware and Garden Stores brings you Garage Logic podcast number 1513. Last day of March 31, 2025. 82 degrees was the record high on this day. That was back in 1986. And on this day in 1975, it was 9 degrees.
Hail the flashlight king.
And now, from the mayor's office above the boathouse on the east shore of Spoon Lake, it's Garage Logic with Chris Reavers manning Technology Corner, Kenny Olson from the Krabby Coffee Shop, John Haidt in the newsroom, and of course, the Rookie. Here is your Flashlight King, Fireworks Commissioner, and the Keeper of Common Sense, your Mayor, Joe Soucheray.
I have ice outs. You want me to say they're brought to us by somebody?
Not yet. Very soon, though.
Minnetonka went out over the weekend, but also on this day in 1945 and 2019. And White Bear may have gone out over the weekend, but also on this day in 1938, 1946, and 1968.
I received a text over the weekend that Cannon Lake in Faribault also went out.
Okay, let me review something. Oh, we're not interested in Cannon Lake and other lakes. And many emailers are wondering why I only do these two lakes, because that's what I have the records for, are these two lakes.
Well, if you want to write this one down, the lake I live on, that ice is mostly out. Went out over the weekend.
I don't want to write it down.
Wait, the cannon is out?
Yes.
Say, shortly we're going to be visited by Sheamus Bruner.
I cannot wait for this one.
No, you're done with that. No.
Yes, sir. Now that we are live.
Sheamus is the vice president and executive director and of research, and Jed McFadder is a senior research fellow at Peter Schweitzer's Government Accountability Institute. The two of them, Sheamus and Judd McFadder, did a two-part series that Breitbart published on the Communist Chinese Party's United Front hub right here in St. Paul. It's 2 minutes from where I'm sitting. It's right off Como. It's on Eustis Street. And we're going to explore with Sheamus what exactly it is they think they've discovered. For example, I spent some time with this over the weekend. Many states have Chinese consulates, Chinese embassies, Chinese cultural centers, and what may very well distinguish this one in Minnesota is that it's a front for the Chinese Communist Party. In what sense, I intend to find out from Sheamus. Is this nefarious? Is it not? I don't know why any united state would have any interest in promoting anything about China. It's right up there with North Korea in its repression. They've killed all the Uyghurs. They don't allow religious freedom. They tell you how many children you can have. They don't allow dissent. They don't allow protest. They don't allow anything. So why they're seen by the likes of Walls, for example, as a wonderful place, I have no idea.
Well, I can tell you why. Mm-hmm. They write big checks.
Well, to who? They've written them to our politicians, it turns out.
Yeah, that's who I mean, yeah.
For what end is another reason we would like to talk to Sheamus. For what possible end? The building over on Eustis Street, right here in town, is called it's called an Overseas Chinese Service Center, OCSC. And they run programs out of there, and they have an adult daycare, and I don't know what that means. And it's headed up by a guy named Dr. Bing-Wen Yan. And the way it's been written up in the study by Sheamus and McFadder is it possibly one of these illegal Chinese police stations that is alive in America? Is it a front for the Chinese Communist Party? If so, what is there for the average Minnesotan to be suspect about? Somebody got to tell Walls' daughter, by the way. Now, I don't know if Walls' daughter is as enamored with China as her father. But she made a big splash today in the Daily Mail, how she's not going to go on to graduate school for a year because she's going to research and find a college to go to where they allow protesting. In other words, she's building the case that college students should be able to protest anything they want, and she's not going to go to a school that doesn't allow that. Well, there's not a school she could go to in China that allows protest.
Well, that's okay.
So I don't know if that's factored into her thinking or not. Maybe she has no interest.
So do you think
in
maybe
China.
she'll spend the year like working, building up
I think
some...
she's headed to a career as a professional Democrat.
Yep.
That would be my guess. But for all I know, she does not have the interest in China that her father does. So I can't speak for her, except I hope she understands that if she is a big fan of the Chinese, she's in for quite a shock because they don't allow a damn thing in China.
Right.
You either toe their mark or you don't. I don't see any reason why you can't try to call Sheamus a bit early.
He has a schedule. So that's what I was
How
told.
busy can he be?
We're
He
gonna
wrote
be-
a 2-part piece in Breitbart that we read last week. Or I read last week. Kenny read it last week. I believe, John, you read both parts. Mm-hmm. And the first part is the idea that on the 1300 block of North Eustis Street in St. Paul, Minnesota, a 10-minute drive from the governor's mansion, sits a brutalist brick building. Let me stop right there. I went over there myself. What does brutalist mean, I wonder?
Do you think it was brutalist when you saw it?
Well, it looks like a dental office or
Just a generic
just a
brick
brick building.
Yeah.
There's nothing brutal about it. I don't know if that's an architectural term or what. On the 1300 block of North Eustis Street in St. Paul, Minnesota, a 10-minute drive from the governor's mansion and a 2-minute drive from here, sits this brick building that houses a secret Chinese Communist Party front operation that serves several functions for the Chinese Communist Party, none of them good for the U.S. Out of this building, the CCP operatives curry favor with politicians like Governor Walz and provide various services for Chinese Americans in Minnesota who are still loyal to Beijing. If you're still loyal to Beijing, why are you even here, I wonder?
Good question.
Anyone? Staff? Anyone? I wonder why.
Oh, well, I have a very reactionary reaction. They're here to do evil. But, that's just me. I don't know for sure. That's just, the way my brain tends to go.
They host meet and greets with CCP diplomats and dignitaries. Businesses registered at this address receive 6-figure grants from American taxpayers.
Oh.
The building has been associated with a web of businesses and groups, including the Alliance of Chinese Culture and Arts, the Center for Community Service, and the Alliance of Minnesota Chinese Organizations. It is also the home of the Overseas Chinese Service Center of Minnesota, which apparently works under the umbrella of CCP's United Front.
Okay, so the names of those businesses, Joe, if the United States had opened similar offices in any country in the world, wouldn't you automatically jump to the conclusion that those are CIA fronts?
Sure.
Yeah, almost right away. Maybe I read too many spy books, but that just seems like a front for me.
According to a recently released U.S. House Oversight Committee report, United Front work is carried out by a vast network, including through the United Front Work Department and Chinese intelligence services, including the Ministry of Public Security and the Ministry of State Security. The Ministry of Public Security has been likened to China's FBI, while the Ministry of State Security is more like China's CIA. Chinese dictator Xi Jinping describes the United Front work as one of the party's magic weapons that helps undermine the sovereignty and integrity of the political system of targeted states.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. That pretty much says it, doesn't it, Joe?
And I have said, and I think this, I'm admitting out front, I think this will be a stretch. But I have been leaning towards the idea that we're governed so poorly in Minnesota that I have been wondering, is there something deeper that's the root of why we're governed so poorly? Now, it's a stretch for me to assume it's because it's being encouraged by foreign entities who are opposed to freedom and capitalism. That's a stretch for me. That's a stretch. I'm not ready to go there yet. But we are governed so poorly and have such an inefficient and incompetent governor who has routinely and openly expressed his fondness for China that I can't help but wonder. I just can't help but wonder.
Yeah.
I don't like anything you just said there. Unfortunately, I agree with all of it. You know what I mean? I hate hearing that. I really do, but prove otherwise.
Well, that's why we're going to talk to one of the authors, Sheamus Bruner. He is the author, by the way, of a book maybe you've heard of. And boy, the Breitbart piece had plenty of pictures. Among the things the Chinese Service Center did during COVID was gather all the supplies they could, the Minnesota branch right here, the St. Paul one, that we were told were so rare, masks and gloves and
You're kidding.
napkins and whatever, and sent them back to China.
Whoa.
They sent them to Wuhan. So
Why?
this service center operating right over here on Eustis Street gathered up all they could and sent it back to Wuhan. So it tells me many things.
Well, that wasn't illegal, right?
Well, no, but you would think someone defending Minnesotans would have said, "The hell with you guys! You come in last trying to get this equipment.
Bingo.
We're first.
Bingo.
You
Yep.
don't get this stuff." Sheamus Bruner is the vice president and executive director, and Jed McFadder, we don't have Jed on, we have Sheamus, is a senior research fellow. They're both with Peter Schweizer's Government Accountability Institute. Bruner is the author of Controligarchs, and Breitbart is an independent nonprofit. I have seen no coverage of this Chinese operation on Eustis Street in either local newspaper. I've seen no cover. Maybe there's nothing to cover. We're going to find out. Maybe this is much ado about a very innocent cultural exchange programs that will teach you how to dance in a Chinese fashion, and let's all learn how to use chopsticks and whatever. I don't know.
We'll find out.
All right.
Well,
I'd like to be on record too, sharing your sentiment. I also like articles with lots of photos.
I know you do.
a lot less
It's
words.
easier to read.
That's right. Well, go ahead and let me tell you about something. Though.
I think you should.
Well,
What do you got?
Let me tell you.
let me tell you about.
Let me tell you.
Let me tell you about precision.
How about Irish Spring?
No, not
He's not
anymore.
on right now. He's
Well,
not.
I don't want that anymore.
I don't know if I can hold myself down.
Has winter taken a toll on your garage door?
Most certainly.
But take a break.
I can't do this.
Take a break.
The Earth is not your mother. The Joe Souchere Show.
Faced with the biggest decision I make every year. It's a huge, huge decision. I never know if I make the right decision. The decision is, when does a GLer put away the snowblower?
Not yet.
When do I take the plow off the truck? What about the
Mid-April.
sleds?
Mid-April.
I know as soon as I take that plow off the truck, we're going to get a foot of snow. The one thing we do know, if you're going to put it to bed for the season, it doesn't matter if it's in the spring or the fall, give those cylinders a good healthy dose of Seafoam before you say goodnight. A dose of Seafoam will ensure they sleep soundly and then awake, ready, and eager to serve. That motor treatment keeps those jets and injectors clean. The cylinder wall's happy. It cleans carbon out of the ports, the passageways. And if you're smart enough to use Seafoam occasionally in your daily driver, it's going to do all of the above and preserve ignition vapors so it always snaps to life when you fire it up, no matter what the temperature is, 115 or 40 below, she comes to life. Find Seafoam anywhere and everywhere that fine automotive chemicals are sold. And keep a couple, 2-3 cans on hand at home. It's a wonderful product in a world of bad gas. It's Seafoam.
All right. We're learning right now if Sheamus is going to be joining us. Are you on hold? All right. Reavers is on hold.
Two things that I noticed here, and I wrote them down. They run 2 adult services for the elderly. One right out of the Eustis Street address called Sunset Care LLC. The other one they run out of Edina called Kang Lee LLC, where they help the elderly and adults adapt to life.
Let's find out. We have Sheamus
here in the States.
Sheamus Bruner. Hello, Sheamus.
Hey, Joe, how are you?
Good. My name's Joe Souchere, and Sheamus, I'm sitting, without exaggeration, no more than 3 minutes from this building you've talked about on Eustis Street.
That is incredible. Right under Minnesotans' noses. It was crazy. The more we dug into it, the more we saw that this really is a CCP outpost, just minutes away from the state capitol and the governor's mansion.
Sheamus, what compelled this investigation?
Yeah, so we've been on chasing down the Chinese for a number of years now. My colleague Peter Schweitzer has published a number of books. Red Handed was probably the first all China book. How American elites get rich, helping China win. His most recent book, Blood Money. How American elites look the other way while China kills Americans, focuses on stuff throughout the country. And so a lot of people know that the CCP operates in New York, they're in Hollywood, they're all over the United States, but we didn't know that they were in Minnesota like this. And the more we looked, it was kind of crazy. It's been going on, I guess, for decades. There's quite some long-standing relationships with the education system in Minnesota. And, of course, Governor Tim Walz, we were looking into him ahead of the election just to see what his ties were, and the more we looked there, the more we saw it was just staggering the number of trips he had taken to China. He had his honeymoon in China, as I'm sure all of you know, and we were stunned to learn that at his gubernatorial inauguration, there were actually several CCP officials invited there, and they met with some of these NGOs that are operating out of the Twin Cities. And so that's really what kicked it off, and we're just going state by state looking for more of these potential CCP police stations, like the one that the FBI busted in New York City.
Do you suspect this is a CCP police station?
You know, I haven't been there physically. You guys are much closer. I don't know that it's hard to say what a CCP police station even is. The one in New York, I mean, I don't know that these guys, I wouldn't accuse the guys there in the Twin Cities of harassing dissidents. I know that they do activities that help the CCP or at least are favorable to Beijing. For example, this NGO that's operating out of there, the Overseas Chinese Service Center, rounded up COVID supplies early on in the pandemic and shipped them back to Wuhan at a time that Americans needed that PPE, the gowns, the masks, the ventilators, and all of that. So that's not very pro-American activities. Whether or not they're doing any sort of physical intimidation or harassment, I could not say. But that is certainly something to be looking for.
How does it benefit Minnesotans to have this cozy relationship with the CCP?
It absolutely does not benefit Minnesotans. When Chinese nationals come to this country, many of them are looking for a better life. They're looking for to get away from the horrors of a communist system. So they come to America and they become patriotic Americans. They go through the process legally, and we certainly encourage that for dissidents to come here. But the Chinese Communist Party, there's a long arm of the CCP law that extends shockingly into America. That's what they found in New York. And if they're intimidating Chinese expats and trying to keep them pro-Beijing, I know there was a University of Minnesota student who was harassed. He posted an image of Winnie the Pooh, which Chairman Xi Jinping does not like when people post Winnie the Pooh images. I know that he was totally targeted and harassed. I don't know that there's any connection to the building on Eustis Street or the Minnesota OCSC, but that's the type of activity that these police stations would do, is harassing anyone who's critical of China, and that would not benefit Minnesotans in any way. You want Chinese expats who become patriotic Americans.
Well, is it plausible that the presence of this group is harmful to Minnesota's economic life, for example?
That's tricky. Like I mentioned, the COVID example, that certainly doesn't benefit Minnesotans. So that's the one hard example I have right now. Other than that, it's all meeting with CCP dignitaries, hosting the Chinese ambassador in Minnesota. I know that that kind of activity of taking all the PPE and sending it back to China. If there's other examples of that, hoarding materials that are critical, that would definitely be negative. But remember, during COVID, this was at a time when there were shortages, so that just kind of shows the MO. Beyond that, it looks to be mostly a cultural center.
Mm-hmm.
It's not exactly like it's a police precinct. That's not what we're seeing, and that's not what we report. So it hosts Chinese artists and Chinese dance troupes and a number of other pro-Chinese cultural organizations. There's nothing illegal with that. But when you get into potential espionage activity and just having these connections to the Ministry of Public Security, mm-hmm. that is like China's FBI. You see some of the photos in the article that we mm-hmm. put out where the Ministry of Public Security hosts these people living in America. They go back to China and they learn about how to advance Beijing's interests. Those are not Minnesotans' interests. Those are not Americans' interests. And so that's the real problem we have here.
What do you think is at the root of Walz's fondness for China?
It seems ideological. He
mm-hmm.
seems to be really a socialist, if not communist at heart. I'm not a resident of Minnesota, so it's easy for me to say down here in Florida what he looks like. You guys would know a lot better than I would, but from what I see, the things I see him talk about, he seems to favor a government-managed system.
Well, and it's a terribly repressive society. The prosecution of Christians and Uyghurs is amazing. They tell you how many kids you can have. They don't allow dissent. They don't allow protests. And if they do, they bring out the tanks. I just can't for the life of me understand why that would be a lifestyle preferable to an American lifestyle.
I know it does. It shocks the conscience, the types of things that go on over there.
Tell us about Dr. Bing-Wen Yan.
Yeah, Dr. Bing-Wen Yan. He's a really interesting guy. He used to be a professor at the University of Minnesota. He's got a couple of businesses in Minnesota, green energy related. He's gotten some federal and Minnesota state funding for these businesses. I'm not sure exactly what they do other than they're in the green technology space. They may be creating jobs. I again, haven't visited Minnesota, but we're going to look deeper into those. Professor at the University of Minnesota, and for some reason he's apparently no longer at the University of Minnesota, but he's still putting his UMN EDU email out there. Mm-hmm. So I went to university a number of years ago. I was able to keep my university email address for a number of years, but eventually they say, okay, time for you to move on, and they don't want to maintain every student's email forever. So that's another thing we're looking into, is how deep are these connections into the University of Minnesota? Do they persist? That's a public university. It receives government funding, and it has partnered with various universities in China, which is sort of concerning. It's taken money from CCP-linked schools, over $3 million in one case. And Dr. Yan, so he is deputized by the Chinese Ministry of Public Security, that again is like China's FBI, to offer something called, quote, local security services, which mm-hmm. is what raises this to the level of potential police station activities. What sort of security services is a guy running a cultural center supposed to have? And he attended a CCP training on cross-border justice enforcement, which, again, that sounds very much like the police station in New York City. Other than that, he's gone to a number of events. He's kind of tight with the CCP's, the Chinese consulate in Chicago, which I believe has jurisdiction through the heartland into Minnesota. And he's there at every hosting of a Chinese dignitary and diplomat who have ever come to the Twin Cities. I believe China's ambassador actually came to that building on Eustis Street to see some cultural performances. And he seems to be very close with the CCP.
Let's put these so-called police stations into context. It's not the police in the sense that they're going to arrest a Minnesotan for speeding. It seems to me it's more that they have the capacity and they have the means to keep track of Chinese people who live in this country. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So when a Chinese national leaves China, comes to America, gets a green card or gets on the process to becoming a citizen, many of those are good people. They
don't want any part. They want to leave China. They wanted to get out of there.
Exactly. And so the distinction we have here is people who have left China to come to America to work for the CCP and to be spies or other sorts of people working against American interests versus just a normal individual who maybe they made a good amount of money in business and they want to come to America to get away from communism. Those people we want to become Americans. The CCP does not. The CCP wants those people who have left China and they've left families behind. And so what a CCP so-called secret police station would do is would go and threaten that person and say, oh, I see that you're posting on Facebook that communism is bad. Your relatives are still in China. We can make their lives very difficult if you continue this activity of posting your experiences with communism and speaking out against the CCP. They'll threaten their family back home in China. That would be the easiest thing to do. The worst is in the New York case. I mean, they were actually abducting and doing all sorts of things with people who were deemed threats to the CCP. So these are not Americans. These are typically Chinese nationals. I don't believe that there's any evidence these CCP secret police stations are actually doing anything to Americans. It's mostly to the Chinese expats living in America.
Sheamus, a couple of questions about the flow of money. I noticed that the CCP has given money to political candidates here in Minnesota, both Republican and Democrats. Then I also noticed this place over on Eustis has a couple of adult daycares, and they have received some grants. So I'm wondering, did you detect money going from the United States to China or more China to politicians and people in the United States?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, and you're absolutely right. It's both. These organizations, the one over on Eustis Street, they got a combined $225,000 for the Kangla LLC and the Sunset Care LLC. That's a good chunk of money from Minnesota taxpayers. That's not federal money. I think it goes through the Home and Community-Based Service Program. So I guess it's federal pass-through money, but it's administered by the state of Minnesota. $225,000 there. And that's just the entities who are registered on Eustis Street. As you may know, all throughout the Twin Cities, I mean, there are dozens of CCP-linked or pro-Chinese various organizations. We just focused at the ones directly tied to the Eustis Street address. So there may be more. And then as far as the money going to the politicians, we only looked at about 3 individuals. We didn't do an exhaustive search of everybody tied to the Minnesota OCSC, the Overseas Chinese Service Center. We just really looked into Dr. Yan and a couple of the other guys, Huang Gao. But we got up into the 5 figures, just shy of $100,000, which is quite a bit for individuals to be donating, especially ones so tied closely to the CCP.
You worked with Jed McFadder on this series. Where are you with this? Are you playing catch up? Are you revealing anything new? Where do you want to take this investigation?
Yeah, so we've got a number of different angles that we're pursuing here. It's we're a national organization. So we look at national things. The ties to Minnesota are deeply concerning, but I think we've got a couple more angles in Minnesota that we're looking into. We particularly want to look into the University of Minnesota connections and what all's going there. We do know that Chinese spies have infiltrated universities across the country, and so education is the two places that we see Chinese spies hide out the most is in education and in these cultural type centers. Well, we've got both happening in the Twin Cities, and so we're probably going to look at the University of Minnesota next. We've reached out to them for comments. We want to see if they've had any scenarios in which they felt like there was any espionage going on in the university. Under Biden, we know that those investigations plummeted, but under Trump, we expect they'll be going back up into the university system. And so that's probably what we're looking at in Minnesota. We've got there's a lot of other things I don't want to speculate here that we're looking into. We could talk offline about what we're looking at in Minnesota, but that's the one that I think we can mention publicly. And then we've got a number of angles that I'll tell you about offline, and I'll be happy to share exclusives with you guys first now that we know each other.
Are you guys gonna go state by state with this?
State by, the big ones, New York, California. And Jed, by the way, he's not in today, but he's my colleague here. We work at the same place. He just published a book, and I guess I'll plug that, Fool's Gold, how radicals, con artists, and traders ruined the state of California and now threaten us all. And that was really all about Gavin Newsom, who, if you do or don't know, has deep ties to China. His wineries, he actually benefits financially from trade with China, and he opened the Golden Gates to California. I think we've done quite a bit of California. D.C. is obviously a place that we focus on a lot because we're the Federal Government Accountability Institute. Florida, actually, we just found some stuff. I can't tell you all about it now, but we've shared our results with federal investigators. We've got some of the purchasing of agricultural land near military bases going on here. And I mentioned some of Peter Schweitzer's last books, found a lot dealing with the fentanyl trade and invasions. Well, with the border sealed up, they're going to be trying to get those drugs into this country in a number of different ways, so we're looking into that. So I wouldn't exactly say all 50 states. I'm not quite sure what. But the thing is, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. You'd be surprised. You go look at Iowa or something, like, what are they doing? We did, by the way, Maine is a state that we didn't expect to look into. Well, we actually found a lot of illegal cannabis growing operations run by Chinese nationals up in the state of Maine. So I wouldn't say that it's going to be a systematic state by state, but as we find stories like the one with these secret police stations operating, there's at least 7 cities. We do not in the piece call the Twin Cities operation, the building on Eustis Street, a police station, but there are others that law enforcement have identified in other states, and we just thought that the building on Eustis Street, the Minnesota OCSC, was doing a lot of similar activities that needed exposure. So we're going to keep on Minnesota. We're going to focus on other states. I wouldn't say it's a systematic state by state, but we'll keep reporting.
Sheamus, I have one more question. I really haven't formed the question yet. Bear with me because I read way too many spy novels, but it seems like all of these places, like the one on Eustis that you guys have discovered so far, are obviously not very well hid front for Chinese intelligence services. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So then, being a connoisseur of spy novels, could this just be a misdirect to hide something far more nefarious going on? Get them asking the wrong questions and we don't have to deal, with the reality? You know what I mean? Or am I just giving this way too much thought?
No, it could absolutely. I mean, the thing is a lot of the cultural organizations and the education activities, these are not per se active, operations. There may be nothing going on, and then they are waiting to be activated for something. So there could be super nefarious purposes, or it could be, like you say, a misdirect, and there's something else going on. and it could just be a way to keep tabs on local Chinese, expats. So any and all of the above, but it's good to be aware. And, we're going to keep mapping out the operations of the United Front Work Department. That's what Xi Jinping calls China's secret weapon, is this United Front Work. That's kind of the umbrella for all things, whether it's espionage, whether it's secret police stations, whether it's influence operations, trying to compromise politicians, get them paid, installing pro-China politicians. It looks like we may have dodged a bullet here by not having Tim Walz a heartbeat away from the presidency because he has had ample opportunities to become compromised on his dozens of trips to China.
It does seem like the politicians in Washington are becoming more and more aware of this. I ended up on a website called oversight.house.gov, and they're saying that China is actively spying on us, fueling the fentanyl crisis, stealing trade secrets, and threatening the energy security. They're targeting, influencing, and infiltrating federal agencies and key industries. So it sounds like we are slowly waking up to what's going on here in the United States with China.
Yeah, that's right. It took a long time. Unfortunately, our politicians sold us out. I mean, we used to have a large industrial base throughout this country, all throughout the country, and they treated China like a friend. I mean, Joe Biden said, come on, man, they're not going to eat our lunch, and they're our friend and ally here. And it's clear that they don't treat us like a friend or an ally. They treat us like, at best, a competitor, and at worst, an enemy. I mean, just the shipping of the fentanyl, Schweitzer, my colleague, revealed that they are basically selling the pill presses for these fentanyl pills at cost to the cartels. They are helping the cartels launder their money back through Chinese banks. The cartels used to use Caribbean-based banks and Latin American banks to launder their proceeds. Now they use Chinese banks, and they are using. There was a really great investigation that showed that they've got a whole system of shuttling the cash back to China to launder into banks. They're also using Chinese apps. They used to use things like Signal or various other encrypted Western apps. Now they use, they being the cartel, they use Chinese apps because China doesn't cooperate with law enforcement. So there is a relationship between China and the cartels that is killing over 100,000 Americans a year with this fentanyl. So that's not stuff a friend does. And then just the COVID operation, that was, they exported a virus to the United States and they didn't tell anybody about it. And meanwhile, they stockpiled all the supplies. And that was one of the shocking things I found about this Minnesota OCSC, is that they were apparently in on the operation to hoard COVID supplies very early on in the pandemic, take them away from Minnesotans, and ship them back to Wuhan. There's photos of them at a FedEx, probably not far from where you guys are right now, shipping your COVID supplies back to Wuhan. So shocking stuff, and that's not the kind of thing that friends or allies do.
I'm going to take you up on your offer, Sheamus, and we'll talk off air. Can I call you later this afternoon?
Absolutely. I'd love that.
I'm going to. Thank you. Sheamus Bruner has been with us, and he and McFadder have done this piece, two-part series. We'll talk again, but in the meantime, I'll take you up on your offer, and I'll talk to you again today.
All right. Take care, gentlemen.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
What do you think?
That's some troubling stuff.
It's stuff I don't want to believe. I'm still resisting. You understand where I'm coming from?
The CP went into the mask-making industry.
Was she compromised?
Because we didn't have any masks.
Right.
These turds are boxing up the masks and sending them back to Wuhan.
You had quite the production lab at your place, if I'm not mistaken. You had an assembly line.
It didn't spill into the garage, but had it. Had it. The garage would have been functioning properly due to Precision Door. Yeah, man, they're the best. The GLers have grown to love them. Precision Door serves Western Wisconsin, the entire metro. Great service with your existing door. And if you need a new door, they can do that too. They have models of doors for every budget. They send out a designer that's free. You do not, let me repeat, you do not have to bring your garage to them. And right now there's a special offer. If you get a new door, Precision Door is throwing in the new motor to open and close it. That's a value of more than $760. Put this number in your contacts for Precision Door MN, 612-263-6985, or you can go online and schedule either an appointment or a new door estimate at Precision Door MN, one word, precisiondoormn.com.
The earth is not your mother. The Joe Souchere Show.
Let me tell you right here, right now, about the best in the business. That's Linda Keller and KellerTaxService.com. I got a great email from Doug and Connie Thompson. We were in the market for a new tax service this year and decided to give Keller Tax a call. Shortly after contacting Linda, we were sent a tax prep package, which we filled out and sent back. We then set up an appointment to go over all of that information with Linda. In a matter of hours, our returns, both federal and state, were done. The whole process was done in efficiency and with professionalism. Could not possibly be happier. Thank you from Connie and Doug. Well, thank you for trusting Linda Keller and Keller Tax Service. Here's the update for this week. Let's see. I know I'm officially GL when you get the 50, 90, 60 look from Joe. This should keep you safe from the look. Unlike last week, tweak it how you want. Here's the deal. She's getting pretty full right now, but go online and book KellerTaxService.com. She does have some weekend appointments, I believe, available, but it's crunch time, ladies and gentlemen. We're coming up on 2 weeks to go before tax filing date. So book your appointment online today, KellerTaxService.com. It's the best, and she also has up-to-date tax information and laws on her website as well. But it doesn't matter what type of return you have, even if you are out of state. She just let me know she had a couple people from California that booked with her as well. So thank you to those of you that have reached out and trusting KellerTaxService.com. Joe?
The Chinese political culture is the opposite of American political culture. I doubt if America could go over to Beijing and establish a number of American service centers and then proselytize about capitalism. So what I took from that conversation is the people if in fact there's nefarious activity there, we really don't know. You can go drive by it yourself. There's a blue awning and it's got Chinese writing on it that probably in Chinese says Chinese overseas Chinese service center.
It looks like a front. Yeah. That whole building looks like it's a front for something.
But the ones most affected, it would seem to me, are Chinese people. In other words, they've fled China. They don't want any part of China. They don't like that ideology. So they come to America, and they're still being chased by a grizzly bear. They can't turn around in their backyard, right. It sounds like, without somebody saying, you left your Aunt Martha back there in China. You want her life to get a little difficult? Don't be putting things on Facebook about how much you like going to the ballpark and sitting in the park and making money.
The one thing I like about you, Joe, is the optimism that you cannot fight. We've come to know with you, you always say no right away to whatever we suggest. We get the initial no. Yeah. And then when it comes to politics and, maybe a little bit with Walz a few years ago and now this, you're so optimistic that it's not the evil that it really is.
I really am, aren't I?
You're really, really hoping and wishing for the best with this. And, of course, like always, I'm on the other side of the coin, and I think this is Satan reincarnated.
Well, but the evil would be most principally directed to Chinese people. These so-called,
what you're hoping, yeah.
This so-called Chinese police department, and we don't know if Eustis Street is that. They're not going to stop you. We haven't reached that point yet. They have no interest in you.
Not yet.
But they have an interest in a Chinese person who might be able to proselytize back home. They don't like that. But the overriding question would be, why are they even here?
Well, that's it exactly.
Why are they here? We're not going to buy your system of government, and you sure as hell aren't going to buy ours. So the people who manage to leave your country and get here, leave them alone. They're going to become Americans. What the hell are you doing here?
Chris and I have an answer, right? Is it the same answer?
Go ahead.
My answer is the Earl Weaver. They are here to F us.
Well, I was going to say, you asked why they're here. Are they just, okay, we're just going to set up a little shop, see what we can get away with, and we'll just inch closer and inch closer.
But what's to
and inch
celebrate?
closer.
So I'm going to learn a Chinese dance. I really don't give a bleep about their Chinese dance. You know, they're going to pass themselves off as cultural centers and artistic centers, and maybe the prematurely gray-haired 42-year-old euphorians love to go to that place on a Sunday and see a Chinese art exhibit and all that. I get that. But if, in fact, they are engaged if they are, in fact, a front for the Chinese Communist Party, I don't want the Chinese Communist Party here.
They are. They're here.
What are they here for?
They're here spreading propaganda. You know, they're doing the same thing the CIA does in other countries. Before we go to news, there's one thing that I just wanted to reiterate. I love the scenario you created with Walls' pirate daughter.
Yeah.
Does she think she's going to go over to China and do the same bullshit over there that
No,
she thinks she can do in this country?
She's just training to become a professional democratic socialist. But Walsey loves the Chinese. He's been there, 30 times. He just, okay, that's cool. You get to love what you love. That's fine. And there's no evidence that Walsey's on the inside of a communist front. There's no evidence whatsoever.
But I'm going to keep looking.
He's just a gullible moron.
That seems to be the case, yeah.
And
unless that's a clever disguise.
Nah, I've come to the
It doesn't
conclusion
seem like it does it.
he's not capable.
He doesn't do clever.
No. He's hospitable to them and welcoming them and come to my inauguration.
Let's go.
And let's all be friends. And in the meantime, they're poking each other in ribs saying, "Do you get this guy? Check this guy out. He's buying this BS."
They're handing out taxpayer money left and right.
Yeah,
This
let's
is
get in line. You should see how the
prime-
Somalis do here, man.
prime
They
for
get
the
a lot of
picking.
money.
Yeah, right.
What I don't get is among the Democrats, China good, Russia bad. Well, aren't they both bad?
Yes.
I don't know.
Walls is the kind of guy that would have the North Korean ambassador over for a game of croquet. Hey, how you doing? Let's go here. These people, I don't know. Do you think Sheamus and his friend are onto something? I can't wait to see what he wants to tell me off the air.
Yeah. I'm not willing to. I don't know, Joe.
I'm glad
answer.
it's a story being looked at.
It's fascinating to me.
I'm glad it's a story being looked at.
Those two pieces, I read them a couple of times each, took notes. Very fascinating. But I do see what you're saying, your takeaway. I do get where you're coming from.
The takeaway is that many states have similar institutions as the one on Eustis Street. Many. There's, in fact, only a handful that might not. Maybe South Dakota does not. I don't know.
You know, and we never did mention all the Chinese that have been coming over the porous borders in the South when Biden was in charge. We didn't mention that. There's always been rumors going on that China's buying up all the farmland. Well, they're not buying all the farmland, but they are buying some farmland.
Well, hordes of Chinese moved to this country in the 19th century. They weren't treated well. They ended up building railroads.
And they weren't treated well, Joe, right up until, I don't know, now, or at least the 90s.
Okay, here's what I did not learn. I did not learn enough to suspect that Walls' governing is based on a Chinese template. I can't go there. It's not there. It's just not there. He's ours. We're stuck with him. He's horribly incompetent and has no sense of financial responsibility.
Okay.
But I don't think that's driven by China.
Well, you're using the word Chinese template. I don't think it would be that complicated. I think it would be more just his general leanings and the way he's been influenced.
I think you may have stumbled on a great new segment idea in GL. What did I not learn today?
Yeah. You get a little bumpered into that.
I'm going to be honest with you. I can't put this much brain power into every show.
Same.
He's already spent for the whole week.
I feel like I need a few days off. It's laryngitis.
I
or
even went to
something.
the damn place on Saturday.
Yeah.
And if it had been open, I would have gone in.
Were they here at night?
What's the storefront like? What do we got? Do we have curtains? Do we have?
Can't we put Jay Coles on this? Let him do all the
It looks just
heavy
like
lifting.
a normal. Go by it. It takes you 2 minutes to get there. It's a
know what?
nothing.
How
It's just
far
a
away
nice
is it?
brick building.
Go
It's got
downstairs
windows.
today.
up there on Eustis?
Yep.
Okay.
Go downstairs and talk to Coles. Get him on
Let's
this
get
so
him
we
on
don't
it.
have
We gotta
to.
have this done.
All I got is a picture of Joe walking in slowly with his hands in his pockets.
Right.
How you doing?
Hey,
You guys up to no good in here?
He
Do you
did
guys have a
mention
public
daycare.
bathroom?
Yeah. Hey, can't you read the sign? No public bathroom.
right. You should start it with ni hao. Hello.
Why don't we come back with Mr. Hyde?
Well,
I thought we were doing that now.
I think we were supposed to go to Joe.
Oh,
John.
we were. That's
Yeah.
right. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Oh, here's John.
patiently
Yeah,
waiting.
here's John.
Hi, John.
What'd you think, John? You were silent.
I thought it was fascinating to hear. So far, I don't hear a lot of substance, but fascinating to think about and ponder. you
Yes,
know.
it is.
I
And
did
Rookie,
like.
you were very good. Thank you.
I was very let down that there was. I thought he was going to have an accent.
well,
Name like Sheamus. That's why I kept my mouth shut. It wasn't fun if he doesn't have an accent.
I did notice in that last conversation we had, Kenny started with, "You know, Joe, the one thing I like about you is."
Yeah.
So I figure Kenny only likes one thing about you, apparently.
Yeah.
One or two.
Right.
There's some off-air stuff I could get into, but
We don't have time. John,
Yes, let's go to news, shall we? This news is brought to you by North American Banking Company. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry telling our friends at 5 Eyewitness News that over the past 5 months, the number of people living in homeless encampments in Minneapolis has dropped, in his words, significantly, and so has the number of corresponding violent crimes that plagued neighborhoods where the encampments popped up. Mayor Fry said it's a world of difference. We have an HR team. That's a homeless response team that is going out and both providing shelter and housing options. Fry told 5 Eyewitness News there are currently 32 people in homeless encampments compared to about 300 in late fall, and the number of shootings and drug overdoses has also dropped. In 2024, city records showed there were 15 shooting fatalities, more than 380 drug overdoses. Fry says as of right now, the largest encampment in Minneapolis only has 4 people. He also credited a mobile medical unit for the decline in overdoses. It's a big bus the city uses when immediate help is not needed. The Minneapolis Police Department also said that since the beginning of March, it had shut down 6 different encampments before they could be established.
you know what, residents of Minneapolis, you better pray and work for the re-election of Fry. Because if you get Omar Fateh,
Kiss
your
her goodbye.
city is
Yeah, see you.
officially over.
Did you hear the key part of what's saving, though, this homeless encampment was
A bus.
bus?
Yeah.
So, John, 4 people, right? Wasn't this a Jay Coles piece also?
Yes, and
Yes.
the biggest encampment right now is 4 people.
Last night he had it.
Does the weather have anything to do with that? Could we
No, no.
revisit this in July?
We can, but I don't. I think they're on the right track finally. Thank God.
Okay.
The pilot killed in Saturday's plane crash in Brooklyn Park is believed to be a U.S. Bank executive. U.S. Bank Corp issued a statement yesterday saying it believes Terry Dolan, the company's chief administrative officer, was aboard the plane that crashed around 12:20 in the afternoon Saturday in the home at 10792 Kyle Avenue. Earlier, federal officials said it's believed the pilot was the only person on the plane and the only fatality from the incident. The single-engine plane was registered in the name of DGW Enterprises. State of Minnesota records list Terry Dolan as the manager of that. Nobody, luckily, in the house was hurt. The residence was completely destroyed. There was a man in the kitchen when the plane hit. He escaped after the crash. The woman who lives there was out walking their dog.
How did they're going to examine the plane? They couldn't put that plane in a baggie.
Yeah.
All the video I've watched, I have yet to see a piece of an airplane.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I think I know this guy. I didn't know that was his name. I've met him. I've met this guy before. He's connected to town baseball.
Really?
No joke, yeah. Wow, I didn't know his name. I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt, Johnny. My apologies.
From the Star Tribune, an International University of Minnesota graduate student was detained by ICE at an off-campus residence last week, according to the university. University releasing a statement said they are actively working to get some details about the incident. In their statement, the university said they had no prior knowledge of the incident, did not share any info with federal authorities before it happened. The student who was detained was a woman enrolled in a program at the Carlson School of Management. U of M offered resources and support for students, including Student Legal Service, Rapid Response website, and International Student and Scholar Services. 5 Eyewitness News has reached out to federal authority as to why the student was arrested, but has not yet heard back. Suspects in a shooting that killed a Champlin Park High School student earlier this month were intending to rob the victim. That, according to the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office. In a Facebook post, the RCSO said the 4 teens who were involved in the death of 18-year-old Diamond Manley looked through his pockets for vape pens after fatally shooting him. The suspects, a 17-year-old boy from Shoreview, a 17-year-old boy from Ramsey, 16-year-old boy from Shoreview, and a 15-year-old from Coon Rapids were arrested March 18th. The Facebook post adds the Ramsey County SWAT teams arrested 2 of the suspects at their home in Shoreview. On Sunday, March 2nd, around 8:30 in the morning, the Anoka County Sheriff's Office said Ramsey police had gotten a call about a driver slumped over a car in Snowy Owl Street Northwest. When police got there, they found Manley dead in his vehicle with a gunshot wound.
See, all you euphorians who wake up every day wondering what you should be worried about, and most of you settle on climate change, which is ridiculous. Why don't you worry about that? Why don't you worry that we have people in this country that will shoot somebody else for a vape pen? I'd worry about that if I were you.
That's troubling.
Yeah.
Our old friend, Republican Marissa Simonetti, announced she's running for the Minnesota U.S. Senate.
Did you know that, Chris?
I did.
This comes less than 1 year after her failed run for Hennepin County Commissioner. She lost the endorsement of the 3rd Congressional District Republicans in June of 2024. That came after her arrest on June 21st, 2024 in Edina. You might remember this.
Did she get a new tarantula for this Senate run?
She was charged at that time with 5th-degree assault after being accused of throwing a live tarantula at a tenant of her Edina home. All of that caught on videotape. She now announces she's running for Tina Smith's seat in the U.S. Senate. In Simonetti's campaign announcement, she says her goal is to, quote, bring hope and peace back to Minnesota. The list of candidates planning to run for the seat is growing. On the Republican side, we have Royce White, in there.
There's a loser.
So is Adam Schwarz, a 2022 congressional candidate. Many other Republicans are being floated as possible candidates, including media personality Michelle Tafoya and several state lawmakers. DFL Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan is officially announced to run, and Democratic Congresswoman Angie Craig has expressed she's thinking about running for that spot.
Well,
you know what?
Michelle Latoya, is it?
Tafoya.
Tafoya, I'm sorry, Michelle. She ain't going to throw a tarantula at you.
Well, but my question was just going to be, does any Republican have a chance to win that seat?
You know, throw my hat in the ring. Let's go. Just throw my hat in there, too. I'm announcing.
Why don't we take a break on
Do I
that
have to
note?
do anything?
With that breaking news that Rook's running,
Yeah,
why don't we
yeah.
take a break, come back after this message?
From Kenny Olson and our friends
Oh.
at ProTurf.
Yeah, it turns out, among other things, it's professionalturf.com season right now at Garage Logic. That's the website of having the best lawn in town is something you desire. It's also the website if you're considering a landscaping and or outdoor living space project. Boy, that's a fancy name for a back patio, isn't it? But that's what it is. If you do want those 2 things, you need to get on the computer, professionalturf.com, and get on the list because the landscaping schedule, boy, it fills up fast. So start planning right now. Beat the rush. ProTurf, a certified landscape designer by the Minnesota Nursery Landscape Association. They'll work with you to design your project, and it's really cool. They use digital photography and landscape imaging software, so you'll actually be able to see what your project will look like when it's done before they even put one shovel in the ground. And oh boy, they can do it all. Trees and shrubs, rock, sod, like I said, maybe a patio, concrete pavers, natural stone, fire pits, driveways, walkways, whatever you can dream up, they can do it for you. And if you just know you need a change, but you don't know what, let their designers help you. Schedule that free in-person landscape design estimate and check out all the work, professionalturf.com.
we know it, and he feels fine. Joe Souchere.
North American Banking Company has one philosophy for all of you GLers out there, and it's this. It's banking done differently. It doesn't matter whether you're looking to do some home or personal finance, or if you've got a business, they're here for you. And that's the thing. I made the switch because I was tired of just being a number with my big national bank, and that's what North American Banking Company offers. All of the services, whether you're looking to buy a home, finance a new home renovation project, or maybe get that new car that you've been thinking about, they are going to be able to help you out. They offer all of the same online and mobile banking options as the other big national banks, but the difference is you're going to get the unparalleled service of a community bank. They are locally owned and operated, which means that loan decisions are made right here in the Twin Cities. They are not sent out of state. So this helps you business owners solve problems quickly and expand your business with confidence. 6 Twin Cities locations to serve you. I can read you like a book, Joe Souchere. Roseville, 50th and France.
I need a loan.
Hastings, Woodbury, Shoreview, and Maple Grove, NA. Bankco.com to learn more. Once again, it's banking done differently. North American Banking Company, member FDIC, is an equal housing lender. John?
Thanks, Chris. The death toll from that earthquake in the Southeast Asian country of Myanmar over the weekend rose to at least 1,600, but there are reports suggesting a significant number of victims remain buried, both dead and perhaps some still alive. Rescue crews had largely not yet arrived in the most impacted areas, impeded by severely damaged roads and downed communications. The 7.7 magnitude quake rocked buildings as far away as Bangkok, which was about 600 miles from the epicenter. A number of viral videos quickly spread across social media, including people escaping a high-rise swimming pool and others running from a collapsing building. The broader region was hit with a number of aftershocks.
If I was in a high-rise swimming pool and she starts sloshing and the building starts swaying, I don't think I'd handle that real well.
You'd be the first one out of that condominium, wouldn't you?
I have a little trouble with that.
There was one video I saw in the news this morning of a woman who was rescued after being trapped under rubble for 40 straight hours.
Well, there's been stories of that over the ages of, it didn't in Mexico years ago, didn't we find somebody that was, buried for a week and was still alive? There's hope. There's hope.
We had a guest on. Didn't we have a gentleman in Chile?
He was
trapped in a mine.
He was the mine. He spoke English.
I don't want to be. But how many among us, just the 5 of us sitting here, if we found ourselves trapped, would just go, this is all right. It's nice and quiet.
Being left alone.
Not getting a lot of blah, 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 blah in my ear.
Depends on the temperature.
Here's a guy that'd rather be trapped buried alive.
And then just for the sake of the game,
After a few days, maybe start getting worried about it.
Well, I saw the videos, and my God, there's going to be more than 1,600 people dead for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Did you see the swimming pool video, Jess?
Yeah, I saw a number of them.
It's very upsetting.
Just awful. Well, what would you do? Where would you go?
I would hop in the pool and just pretend I was swimming really fast.
I'm not a very good
Just
swimmer.
to kill the time. I'm not a strong
I'm
swimmer.
not a strong swimmer.
I don't think I would be on that floor anyway.
I should have prefaced that, Kenny.
yeah.
You're right. There's no way I'm going in a pool on the roof of a building.
Although I am.
I'm not.
It was way up there,
I'm afraid I'd fall off.
Peter Marks, the top Food and Drug Administration official who oversaw vaccines, gene therapies, and the blood supply, has resigned after being told by Trump administration officials he'd be fired if he didn't step down. In his resignation letter, which was obtained by various news agencies, Marks said he had tried to answer the concerns of Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. regarding the safety of common childhood vaccinations. He said, as you're aware, I'm willing to work to address the Secretary's concerns regarding vaccine safety and transparency by hearing from the public and implementing a variety of different public meetings. However, he added, it's become clear that truth and transparency are not desired by the Secretary, but rather he wishes subservient confirmation of his misinformation and lies. The public's immediate concern will not be Marks's long work in gene therapy, according to health experts, but the questions he raises in the letter about the integrity of the U.S. process for regulating vaccines. President Trump said he is very angry, and now this is a quote from the president, so don't yell at me.
Tremendous amount of anger.
He's very angry and pissed off at remarks Russian President Vladimir Putin made Friday about Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky, suggesting he's not a legitimate leader. President Trump threatening to slap a new tariff on Russia if it is at fault for stalling and putting an end to bloodshed, according to President Trump. The Russian president said Friday his Ukrainian counterpart does not have the legitimacy required for a peace deal signature and suggested an interim government is needed. This morning, Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin's main spokesman, responded to Trump's remarks, saying some of the statements were given in paraphrase. They were not direct quotations. Secondly, several different statements were actually made. We continue to work with the American side on building our bilateral relations, which suffered enormous damage during the previous administration. President Trump yesterday not ruling out seeking a third term in office, telling NBC News that he's, quote, not joking about the possibility and suggests there are methods to circumvent the two-term limit laid out in the Constitution. Trump told Meet the Press hosts Kristen Welker that a lot of people wanted him to serve a third term. Any attempt to seek a third term would run afoul of the 22nd Amendment, which begins, no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. Trump's allies
that includes you, Trumpy.
Trump's allies have amplified the idea he could serve another term. 3 days after Trump was sworn in for his second term, Representative Andy Ogles of Tennessee proposed an amendment to the Constitution that would make Trump eligible for a third term. Such a measure would be extraordinarily difficult. Constitutional amendments require approval by a two-thirds vote of Congress and then ratification by three-quarters of the states. Trump said yesterday, no, I'm not joking, when asked again if he thought he could.
Didn't FDR have 4 terms?
He did. There's no constitutional amendment, though. That's why we have a constitutional amendment, because of FDR's 4. The mortgage company Rocket is buying competitor Mr. Cooper in an all-stock deal valued at $9.4 billion.
Wow.
That comes just weeks after they acquired real estate listing company Redfin. Rocket Companies said today that bringing Mr. Cooper Group into the fold will create a business representing 1 out of every 6 mortgages in the United States and give it almost 7 million additional clients. The deal will boost loan volumes, the company said, while lowering client acquisition costs. Mr. Cooper shareholders will receive a fixed exchange ratio of 11 Rocket shares for each share of Mr. Cooper common stock. Mr. Cooper is based in Coppell, Texas. Rocket shareholders will own about 75% of the combined company, while Mr. Cooper stockholders will own about 25%.
Isn't that a conflict of interest for a mortgage company to buy a listing site?
Apparently not.
Who's the listing site?
You said Redfin. You said they acquired Redfin.
Oh, they acquired Redfin earlier, yeah. Is Redfin a listing site?
Yes. Well, I think I told you about him. Gilbert, the guy that owns this company, bought the Cleveland Cavaliers. He essentially is the one that purchased all of Detroit's real estate on pennies on the dollar.
Which company does he own? I'm sorry.
Rocket. He's Rocket Mortgage.
Rocket. I see. Interesting. My mortgage is with Mr. Cooper. Not that anybody cares.
What does that mean?
So you're hanging with Mr. Cooper.
Who in the hell is Mr. Cooper?
It's a company that handles
Is there a guy?
Alice.
Wasn't he the guy in Tess? That was Mr. Hooper.
That's Hooper.
Richard Chamberlain, who came to prominence in the 60s as Dr. Kildare and then became king of the miniseries with ratings blockbusters like Shogun and the Thornbirds, has died. Chamberlain was 90. I am not going to confess, I thought he was already dead when I saw this story.
I didn't think about it.
The actor died Saturday of complications following a stroke, according to his publicist. Chamberlain's all-American matinee idol look stood in the way of his acting career sometimes until he proved himself on stage in a highly lauded production of Hamlet and taking other Shakespearean turns. It was not enough, however, to propel him to major big-screen career. He starred in several notable films, including Petulia, The Three Musketeers, The Music Lovers, and Peter Weir's The Last Wave, but his forte continued to be in the small screen, where he played everyone from England's Edward VIII, the novelist F. Scott Fitzgerald, to World War II hero Raoul Wallenberg.
Was the Thornbirds, was that in Australia? Set in Australia?
No idea.
I don't think
Is that
so.
all
That
just
was
a-
I think
Rachel Ward.
it was Nebraska, I think.
Nebraska?
His death and reading his obit proved to me once again that I have the worst gaydar in the history of mankind.
Oh, you didn't know he was gay?
No idea.
I found that out too on the story. I had no idea.
I remember when he wrote his book, reading about it, which was, I don't know, 20 years ago, maybe?
I didn't think about it.
A fictional.
You mentioned that.
A fictional sheep station in the Australian outback.
See, I knew it.
Well,
In
there
the
you
back
go.
of my mind, I thought, that's Australia.
Speaking of celebrities, do you know who I had a very...
Matt, we're doing the news.
Do you know who I had a very charming conversation with today at the airport?
Whom?
Anne Margaret.
No.
Vavoom.
Seriously, yeah,
Still Vavoom?
She's 83 and she's still got the Vavoom.
Yeah.
She got some nice VIP
Why don't you have her
treatment.
on the show?
I chatted with her and I was like...
Did you make out with her?
No, I did not. I chose
I
not
would
to.
ask her if we could make out just for a few minutes.
I would have
83,
had to get her out of the wheelchair, so I chose not to.
Oh.
He'd tell her
No,
she can.
it's not bad. I just think she's...
Tell her
Honest
she can.
to God.
She can
Honest to
take her
God.
teeth out, Matthew, while we make
She
out.
had a beautiful smile.
Well, come on.
She had a beautiful smile, and she was very charming.
Why was she here?
I didn't have lunch with her, but I just talked to her. She's no,
You know
she
what?
had, she had people. She
You
had
wheel her?
people.
Were you pushing her?
I did not wheel her around.
Matt, was she coming in or leaving?
She was arriving.
Oh,
You
boy.
have to go to the internet. You have to get that picture of her on that Mr. America Harley Davidson.
Oh, that's
Have you
a
ever seen
great
that picture?
photo. Yes.
She's
No.
driving down the highway in this big chopper with ape hangers with her legs spread out in the air. It's the most amazing.
It's a little bit not like the wheelchair picture.
It'll,
Not like the wheelchair.
Matthew, it's a life-changing photo.
Well, God bless her, and I'm glad she's here.
She was just she was there with her
Matt,
daughter. And
serious, get that photo printed out, keep it on you, so in case you meet her again on her way out, you can get it autographed.
Yeah.
so just
Get
have
it
rolled in
autographed
my
to
back
Kenny.
pocket.
It's a little creepy.
All right.
I want her to say to Kenny, "I'll make out with you anytime."
I just happen to
Love,
have
Ann.
this picture with me, Ann.
Yes, look at that. I didn't even know you were coming here today.
She was a lovely woman, man. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, she still got it.
So was she okay?
Is her
I
hair
believe
red?
you.
She had a hat on.
Oh.
Was her
Like a
hair
twins
still
hat,
red?
or, what kind of hat?
It was one of those Don Vogel ones.
Oh, yeah?
I would make out.
giant cans on the
Yeah,
front.
Yeah.
I would make out with her right up until her last breath, or maybe even 5 minutes after.
John, do you have any more news? Because when he starts doing that,
think
I
she's
just,
available.
we're done. We're done.
Oh my God! I don't know
I've
that
got
I
to
can
even
do
out
anything
somehow.
else.
Gotta
Such-
even- what?
I've got to even it out from that serious stuff to begin with.
I'm just trying to break even.
I saw Ken Herbeck the other day, and he said,
I don't care.
Hey, shouldn't you be on the radio? Hey.
Did he ask if he could make out with you?
Yeah, is he still
Yeah,
looking pretty
I
good?
said,
Is he?
If you get out of the wheelchair, I will. Okay, Ken?
Where was he going?
Punta Cana.
Joe, why don't we take a break? Even though I have more stories that at this point, why?
You're right, John.
I mean, Thornbirds, Australia.
Everybody we tell you about is your guy. We got an electric bike guy. We got a start your engine guy.
Ann
We've got
Margaret
garage
guy.
door guys. You need a lawyer guy. Bradshaw and Bryant, personal injury attorneys in the event. God forbid you're ever in an accident. You're going to be like many of us. You won't know what to do with the insurance companies and the adjusters. They're difficult to deal with. Let Mike Bryant from Bradshaw and Bryant and his team explain your rights and represent you and help you in a difficult time. Mike's been around, man, for 6 consecutive years. He's been a super lawyer, and he's been recognized among Minnesota's top 40 personal injury lawyers by Minnesota Law and Politics. Bradshaw and Bryant hopes you're never in an accident, but if you are, call them. 800-770-7008. Put that in your context. Is this going to be your guy? 800-770-7008, or go to minnesotapersonalinjury.com for a free case evaluation. And don't be part of the problem. Don't text and drive or drive distracted. That's just common sense from Bradshaw and Bryant.
Make a move. Joe Souchere.
Hey, have you upgraded that town council membership to an annual one? Well, if you have, then you are eligible to be this week's GLer of the Week. If you haven't done so yet, well, now is the time. If you want to be highlighted and mentioned on the show this Friday by the mayor himself, go to garagelogic.com and learn more.
Ba-ba. love that.
It's very nice.
Did Dylan write that?
Dill did. He loves the reggae.
So do
Probably
I.
his favorite,
Peter
probably his
Tosh.
favorite style of music, actually.
Yeah.
Well, I got another note from the Mink.
Let's go.
Oh, God.
Well, last week, Reavers, in your absence, we learned that the city of Falcon Heights is going to begin charging people to just park on the street during the state fair. Apparently, so far, that's been free. But now the Falcon Heights wants a taste.
Right.
As long as you're going to be here for 10 days, people, we want some of your money. And I poo-pooed it. And I'm being taken to task by the Mink,
Got it.
who now refers to himself in the third person, the Mink. The Mink would like to take you to task for your viewpoint on state fair parking. Shouldn't the city of Falcon Heights be allowed to turn a buck on the joy that is the state fair? As someone who knows the value of Adam Smith's What the Market Will Bear, you may have missed the boat here. The fair makes money. The citizens nearby make some coin on yard parking. Why does Falcon Heights
Okay, Clem.
have to leave money on the table? While it would mark the end of a quaint and frustrating tradition of finding a spot, I see no reason that for 2 weeks out of the year, Falcon Heights can't make some extra money. If it's a reasonable price and someone is willing to pay it, why the heck not? Note, the Mink has no affiliation with the city of Falcon Heights and usually takes a shuttle to the fair. All right, thanks, Mink. I suppose he has a point. You know, Falcon Heights wants to
Make some money.
make some
You
coin
gotta-
off the deal. What am I going to do? You know.
Did I tell you about Aunt Margaret?
Yeah. If the tariffs go into effect tomorrow on cars, well, among many things, but I don't think that's going to end well for car manufacturers and car buyers. I bet a car will go up about 10 grand is what we're reading.
For real?
Yeah. 25% tax on imported cars, light trucks, and auto parts. The tariffs will force car companies to rethink what cars they make and where they make them. You might literally have to buy a car today, right? Let's say you were going to buy an Acme minivan that's at 30 grand tomorrow, and it's made in Japan. Is it going to be $33,000 tomorrow?
I cannot answer that question. I don't know when it comes into play.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, but is it that? I mean, so they have to go redo the MSRPs on the cars that are on the lots right now?
No, I think the cars on the lot would escape that, wouldn't they?
They're
Be all the
grandfathered
incoming
in?
ones.
The 2025 Honda Odyssey, a small minivan, sells MSRP is $42,000.
Right. So is that now going to be 44,400?
Did you say a Honda Odyssey is 42 grand?
The average price of a new car is over 42 grand in this country already without the tariffs.
Do you have the Blue Book open? Can you tell me about a 2008 Volkswagen Jetta with some light rust?
You owe the buyer $100.
Okay, got
You
it.
would have to pay somebody to take it.
Got it, yes.
Did you get a good deal on that car?
I got screwed.
He got a hell of a
I got
deal,
so
and then he
effed-
ran the damn thing into the ground.
It just hit 140 this weekend.
I just checked my plow truck mileage, Joe.
Yeah.
234,000 miles on that thing.
I don't think of all the cars I've owned in my lifetime would equal 234,000 miles.
I put six
I have
on in
to-
a week.
I have to warm it up for about 10 minutes for the tappets or valves or whatever they are to stop. Well, I almost said the F word, rattling and just going. Takes a while to get the circulation.
Remember, it used to be
going.
100,000 miles. In
I'm
the
trying to
car was
explain
shot?
this to you.
Oh yeah, because I want to get the show done. Let's go. What are you waiting for?
As automakers expanded globally, they created complicated and efficient supply chains that spanned countries. In North America, for instance, Mexico supplies low-wage labor and makes smaller, less expensive cars and trucks, while Canada and the United States provide more skilled labor and technological know-how. Trump's tariffs are intended to bring auto manufacturing back to the U.S. Well, probably not in my lifetime. I'm running out of time here for this moron to keep up his tariff experiments.
Right. That's
Here,
good.
I might not have this correct, but here's how I see it. Mexico might make a starter for a car, but only the body of it.
Okay.
Then it gets sent to the U.S., and the U.S. might put some electrical components on the starter. And then the starter, and this is all done with efficiency, believe it or not. They got this figured out. Then the starter is sent to Canada, where they might insert a spindle or something. And then it comes back to the Ford Motor Company, and it gets put in a car. Well, now you got a tariff coming from Mexico and a tariff coming from Canada on a part that'll be used to build an American car. This is going to be a cluster bleep.
I don't understand it.
The body of my car was made in Italy, but the car was assembled in America, so that kind of is the same thing you just said.
The next vehicle I buy is going to be made in the 80s. I swear I'm done with everything after 1995.
You know what?
I am done.
If you can find one.
Yeah, I'm going back.
Good luck.
If you got one.
You're here for one reason.
Yeah. And your address?
Rerouting the source of thousands of parts, that little scenario that I told you, which might be inaccurate, but not entirely. Rerouting the source of thousands of parts that are imported to the U.S. and uprooting assembly operations will take years. It adds to the uncertainty facing all automakers as the industry's supply chain is inherently global and is optimized around moving components across national borders where free trade agreements have existed, said John Paul McDuffie, a professor of management at the University of Pennsylvania. Sam Florani, analyst at Auto Forecast Solutions, notes that while European makers of luxury vehicles and their buyers can afford some price adjustments, it's the companies like Toyota, Mazda, and Subaru who import large percentages of their fleets who will take a beating. Throwing tariffs on the parts of vehicles built in Mexico and Canada that aren't sourced from the U.S. will hurt the profits of GM, Stellantis, and Ford over the next quarters, costing them billions. Trump's tariffs, which he insists are permanent, will force companies to make hard choices. It's going to have the effect of forcing companies to increase U.S. content if they want to dodge the import taxes. Okay, but how fast can they bring that up to speed?
That's the question. $1 million. I don't know how fast.
So you're getting a transmission now that's partially made in Mexico and partially made in Canada and completed in the U.S. To avoid the Mexican and Canada tariffs, you'll have to build the entire transmission in the U.S., which requires tooling and reconfiguration and everything under the sun.
Yeah.
So you're saying it's too late to go back, huh? Back to the way it used to be. Remember how Ford did it? Everything was done. Everything right in Detroit.
Well, to the point where iron ore pellets entered one end of the building and a car came out the other end. Now, we're a long way from that. A ship would leave two harbors full of iron ore, and if it didn't sink, like the F. Scott Fitzgerald, it would leave there. It would go to Detroit's plant on the Detroit River, unload the pellets. The pellets got turned into steel right there, and then out the other end came a Model T.
And
we just
don't
have
forget
to get back
rubber.
To those old school values, don't we?
Yeah.
The rubber,
forget
Ford
St. Paul.
owned the rubber plantations.
What about St. Paul?
St. Paul made its own glass from sand from the river.
We were down there.
I was in the tunnel.
Yeah.
So that's his goal. That's the president's goal.
Well, he's not young enough to pull this off. This is a long way away.
Well, you got to start somewhere.
Well,
But
good for
I
all
see-
you youngsters.
Usually at the beginning is where you start.
Yeah.
That's a good place to start.
I don't know if it's possible.
The average price of a new car or light truck in the U.S. averaged $47,000 last month. But that will go up $5,000 if automakers pass along the entire cost to consumers. That price hike could go higher to as much as $10,000 if the Trump administration applies the tax full to cars made in Mexico and Canada, even though they would have parts. See, that same thing is true. The parts for the cars made in Mexico and made in Canada, they're also receiving parts for those cars that were made in America.
Well, then they need to prorate them, those tariffs.
You know what this world needs? It needs a meteor. It needs global earthquakes. It needs volcanoes, and then it needs nuclear devastation. That's what this world
and more
needs.
pool rooftops.
We need to just start over.
Can you call a microphone department?
We need better mic stands.
Only
put that
because they
right
come
at the
to
top.
us.
Yeah.
Only because they come to us all the way from Marloth Park in Mpumalanga Province, South Africa, from our friends, the Traveling Lymans. It was on this day in history.
March 31.
On this day in 1810, newspaper editor James M. Goodhue was born in Hebron, New Hampshire. In 1849, he established the territory's first newspaper, the Minnesota Pioneer, and now that paper, which started back in 1810, doesn't even have a building. Started the Pioneer, which prompted the territory both within its borders and beyond. Goodhue died in 1852, but in 1858, Jane Grey Swisshelm used his press after hers was destroyed in a fire. See March 24th.
What year did the name change?
I don't know. On this day,
Oh, sorry. I don't know. March 31.
We're done, Chris. Stop asking questions.
Yes,
on
sir.
this day in 1847, for the fourth and final time, Seth Eastman took command of Fort Snelling. On this day,
March 31.
in 1918, Roald Amundsen, the famed Norwegian polar explorer who had discovered the South Pole in 1911, addressed a large audience in Duluth about the ongoing battle of World War I and appeals to the people of the U.S., especially American labor, to stand behind the president to the last ditch and to work with 100% efficiency to the end of the war. After remarking that Norwegians in this country will be pleased to know after the war that they too have had a share in the liberation of mankind, Amundsen continued on a speaking tour of Minnesota and later returned to Norway to prepare for his North Pole expedition. And finally, on this day,
You're talking about the last day of March 31st.
always one of my favorites that comes up on this day in history.
that one?
What's the date?
March 31.
In 1934, a shootout between outlaw John Dillinger and the FBI occurred at the Lincoln Court Apartments, which would have been about Lincoln and Lexington in St. Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Dillinger escaped a few months later, but was shot to death by FBI agents in Chicago.
What's at Lincoln and Lexington now?
The same apartment with the apartments that
Oh, it
were
is.
there in 1930.
It is.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Kitty corner from the Lex.
Yeah.
Or their
Interesting.
lot.
Okay.
And finally, on this day in Minnesota sports disappointment history.
Well, we've got another one brewing right now.
We
But go
sure
ahead.
do. On this day,
March 31.
in 1971, the Twins released Louis Tiant.
Really?
Oh, Louis had that good stash.
On this day,
March 31.
in 1980, the Phillies lost to the Iowa Comets in the semifinals. That had to be women's basketball, right?
Yes, sir.
And on this day,
On March 31.
in 1981, the Phillies played their last game because the league folded.
Oh.
Yeah. And we've got we got an 0-3 team leaving St. Louis.
They are already down 3-0 in Chicago.
And they're down 3-0 in game one at the White Sox.
Yes, sir. It's going to be a long summer.
Geez, but you know what? Baseball's got such a pay inequity problem that it's just pathetic.
Yes.
And what's with these new bats?
Yeah.
I'll save that for Patrick. He's doing a yoo-hoo-hoo from the other room there. Thank you, GLers.
please do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. It's right there on the Garage Logic YouTube channel, because on that YouTube channel, you can watch the show each and every single day, starting right around noon. You can also see full segments, video shorts, behind-the-scenes footage. It's all there for you on the Garage Logic YouTube channel, so check it on out. You can also follow us on all of our social media channels, which includes Facebook, Instagram, and X. And sign up for the Daily Logician. It's an email, and it comes right to your inbox each and every single day, and it includes the most recent episode of the podcast. It's right there for you.